Hello, Vinny.
Hi, Sidra. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming out and talking to me tonight.
Thank you so much for this platform, this outlet. I think it's important.
Absolutely. And November is National Adoption Awareness Month.
It is. It
And
is.
yeah, and I wanted to showcase some of our families that went out and adopted children. So you're an adoptive mom. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience with the whole adoption process?
It took about 2 years for us to do all the paperwork, to be, matched with our son and all of that. And he's now been home with us. We decided to go the international route. My husband and I are both Indian. We actually lived some time in India as children too.
What
hmm
part of India are you from?
We're from Kerala,
Okay, so you're
South India.
Malayali, just like me.
Malayalis.
Great. So how was the adoption process for you and your family? Was it a difficult one?
It's somewhat difficult. It's emotionally, draining. There's a lot of
Right.
paperwork. For us, particularly, the beginning was okay, but once we were matched with our son, we had some difficulties at the end of our process to finalize. But that's the thing with adoptions. Everyone's is very different, and it really depends on what region you're working with, what
Okay.
court, what judge you're working with, and whatnot. Once you're matched with your child, you have what's called you get referrals, and then once you accept a referral, you're matched, and then you wait for something called the NOC, no objection certificate,
Yeah.
and that's what India gives you. So once you have that, it's legally binding, and you can go to India and you can foster care your child while you wait for court proceedings and whatnot. So for us, we did go after NOC to be with him. It was tough. It's really tough to go to India. It's tough to be in a when you're grown up here and to go into a completely different
Different.
culture.
Right.
Going to an orphanage is never easy. You can't unsee some of the things that you see. You see there's so many children that are
Right.
just there and in a bad situation, even if the orphanage is great, even if they're doing everything they think is best for the child, and they're coming from a loving place,
Right.
it's still not a family, and it's still not the love of you know you know primary caregiver. It's
Right.
not the attention that a child needs.
Were you able to say, I want a boy, I want a girl?
There is, you specify, what type of
Okay.
your preferences, whatnot, male, female, age group. Not, you
Okay.
can't say, I want exactly a 2 year old or an infant. You can say infant, but infant is from 0 to like 36 months. If you decide to go the special needs route, there are different, special needs, right? So
Mm-hmm,
you
mm-hmm.
can be very specific on what you can
Yeah.
handle versus what you can handle.
Yeah. I think I was talking to another mother. It was
Mhm.
years ago, and she was telling me, yeah, there wasn't a choice or anything. You just kind of waited, so you didn't know, it was a
Mm.
boy you're getting, a girl, or what age, or
At the end of the day, you want to make sure what you can handle, what you can't handle, if
right.
you have a choice. I think it's important that, you go into it fully knowing exactly what you can handle.
How long did
Yeah.
it take, for your son to take to you and your husband?
We thank God for our just how everything played out for us. He looked at us, he just walked over to us, and he just, sat with us. He was okay. He was okay to leave. He was concerned about what was going on, but he came
Right.
with to us easily.
That he made a
So
connection
he
with
did, he
you.
did.
Right.
Yeah. It's not always the case. We have seen,
Yeah.
pictures where kids are crying or kids are not happy, and that's the norm, right? That's the norm.
Absolutely.
If
Right.
kids not to be happy to leave, that's what's typical because it's hard to leave, some place that
Yeah.
you're so adjusted to,
And then from there, getting onto an airplane,
Right.
going to
Yeah.
another country, people speaking different languages. I mean, that definitely is an adjustment.
Yeah, it's a culture shock. It's the weather.
Yeah.
It's little things that we don't even take for granted, but
So is adoption something that was always in your heart?
it was something that my husband always talked about,
Okay.
from from the time when we were dating, it's was always on the table. It was never off the
Wow.
table. Yeah, so I didn't bring it on the table. It's something that it resonated with him. So we always kind of thought that it would happen later on, in life, or we didn't think anything ill of it or anything like that. But we did have a hard time starting a family. And then my husband brought up adoption again, before we, sort of um, investigated all the other options. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting that it's happening this way.
Right.
So then we started to, just do the initial steps for it. And before I knew it, it became a passion. I can't think about my life in any other sort of circumstance any other way. So some people, come to it different ways. I think as a Christian, I think we all are called to orphans. I think we're all called to do something. You may not be called to parent a
Right.
child, but you can certainly support adoptive, families. You can support orphans in other ways.
I think
Hmm.
all religions, I mean, if we were just to say, there is always a special
Yes.
importance to orphans and widows and those that don't have. And yes, like you said, as Christians or just as human beings, it should be part of our desire to help someone who
Absolutely.
is in
Yeah.
need. That's why I think it's great that you and other mothers, families are coming out and speaking in the community,
Hmm.
because it probably is not that common of a thing in our Indian community to even consider it, because it is an expectation of, okay, you get married and you have some kids, and adoption is
Hmm.
probably something that is not necessarily on the table unless you have to.
Yeah.
And even then, a lot of people will probably try and talk you out of it. Was that the case for you? Did you have people either encouraging you or discouraging you?
We had some wonderful, encouraging people in our life. There were many conversations I had with people in the community that just didn't understand why we would want to go that way, or just kind of felt like, why not exhaust your other options?
What do you think
Mhm.
was their concern?
Honestly, I think it probably was coming from a good place. You're going into the unknown, or you know, I always say, and I kind of joke, I think Malayalam movies kind of, kind of.
That's interesting that you say that. That is, I haven't watched a lot of Malayalam movies, but
Someone mentioned to me there was some movie that they had seen years ago, and this child was adopted, and something horrible happened. And I feel like we tend to dramatize
yeah,
um things, right, that are not normal or the norm walk.
right,
And you create a fear in your mind. Nobody was going to convince us not to. We didn't ask
right.
permission for anybody to give us an okay to adopt our son. We made the decision, and we appreciated the people that came alongside us and
Yeah.
encouraged us.
Yeah, one of the things that I've thought about is that whenever we have a desire and we tell somebody in the community, um,
Hmm.
a lot of times immediately they will give their advice.
Hmm.
I wish we could do a little bit of a tweak on that and say, instead of doing that, ask the person, so
Hmm.
why? Why do you want to do
Hmm.
this? What's in your heart? What led you to come to this decision? That to me is a lot more healthy and probably would be a lot more productive than immediately saying, "Oh no, don't do that," or "Yes, do that." We
Hmm.
need to learn to listen to each other and find out what's in each other's heart.
I agree, absolutely. I think it's important to hear people out, because everybody walks a different path, right? Everyone's
Right.
life is, everyone's history is a little different, everyone's story is a little different. So, and I think that's what makes, life kind of beautiful, right? So,
We have a
and it goes,
formula. We have a formula. We're very
yes.
scientifically
We are.
minded. One plus one equals two. Don't try to make it three. I can totally hear somebody in
No.
my family saying that. Don't try to make it three. It's so interesting when you were talking about Malayalam movies,
Hmm.
because there was actually something like that I believe was based on a real story.
We could be talking about the same
We could be
movie.
talking about the same thing, and there could be 10 movies like this, but that they're based loosely on, events that have
Yeah,
occurred.
right.
And there was something like that where, you adopted a child and they ended up doing horrible things to the whole family, something like that.
Right. Right.
Um, and
This is what we heard, yeah. I mean, not, this wasn't the majority of what we heard, but I remember having this conversation with somebody and, they were just worried that, something horrible was going to happen. And
yeah,
at the time, I was just like, how, this is one thing that happened, right? That's not the norm for
yeah,
everybody. If we think about what's going on in our time now and, what we're hearing on the news, that's not the norm. That shouldn't stop children from having families, right? So,
right.
that's something I think I've been recently speaking out more because I'm just hearing so many negative things about adoption, and it just, obviously it hits close to home for me.
Right.
And it's just, I felt like it was really important to say that it's not an adoption issue. It's might be a parenting issue, but it's not something that should stop us from exploring adoption. Or
Yes, and there are so many wonderful people like you and your husband, and so many others. They have the love to give, and they have, the means, and there are children there. So why would we, based on an incident or even two incidents, I mean 10 incidents, it doesn't matter, there are still wonderful, beautiful people out there that deserve to give their love to a child.
So, one of the things that's actually difficult right now is also being an Indian adoptive parent, right? So
Okay.
I'm connected to a lot of, support groups, and generally it's people of all ethnicities, right? So when I step into there, the narrative there is that the tragedy that, we're hearing about is that it's an Indian on Indian crime, right? So
Okay.
interesting. But then when I step into the Indian community, the narrative there is that, oh, well, they're adoptive parent. It's an adoptive parent issue. So
Wow.
being an Indian adoptive parent is very isolating. It's
Yeah.
very, you feel so alone because you feel like, there isn't a target or anything on me, but you can't help but feel a little defensive because you're trying to defend adoptions and you're trying to, you are an Indian parent, right? I
Right.
can't change that about myself. So, I mean, it's just been a really tough, time with everything that's going on in the news to be an Indian adoptive parent.
Well, you continue doing what you're doing, and I think that will speak louder than anything else.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. For me, it's, adoption is a beautiful thing, that we shouldn't take away from that experience because to me, it's been life changing.
Well, I appreciate that you continue to advocate for it and, just spread the word. It definitely works. Just recently, I had somebody messaging me asking me to be connected to one of the moms that I had interviewed. And
Hmm.
that I thought to myself, wow, if that's the only thing that came out of that, that's amazing to me,
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
that's absolutely one of the reasons, like, I think it's important to talk out
Mhm.
about it because I don't want people to feel like they're alone. I'm a new mom, right? So,
Right.
but getting connected to people is so important because,
Yeah.
anyone, any mom that's new, I feel like adopted or
Absolutely.
biological,
Yeah.
you can't do it alone. So,
Exactly. So yeah, whether you adopted a child or not, and it's your biological child, there needs to be a support group. There needs to be resources, and you need to feel confident enough to say, okay, I can ask this question without being condemned or having any kind of a backlash. But do
absolutely.
you have that kind of a support system with your family or your friends? Do you feel that way?
I do. I have certain people that I can talk to freely about things. But I would say the adoption groups and the support
Okay,
groups have been by far the most helpful to me. People who have walked the same path as me and
right.
experiencing the same things
Mm-hmm.
are, essential.
Vinny, tell me a little bit about your son.
He's just a joy to us. He completes us in so many ways. So he just turned 4. It was his birthday just a few days ago. So we
Oh,
had a
happy
birthday
birthday
party
to
for him.
him.
Thank you. He's just a typical boy, really.
Is he
He his edu-
naughty?
He's starting to be. I guess this is sort of the age maybe that, they start to be. It's interesting because when you're an adoptive parent, it was sort of like your instant parents, right? So
Right.
that shows that he is, adjusting well and he's
Yeah.
comfortable with us. So, yeah, so he's, like any other kid really.
How is everybody receiving him? Was it strange to the children that, or did they ask a lot of questions like, who are you? you know?
For most of my nieces and nephews, I did try to sort of prepare them a little bit
Okay.
ahead of time. They were curious because the ones that are a little bit more vocal were like, "Hey, what's going on here?" They were curious about it. But yeah, it's been, my close family has been very loving, very open, and very
Wonderful.
supportive, which, we really appreciate and we're thankful for.
Vinny, if I may ask, was it always that way?
Supportive. I would say, when first hearing about adoption, I don't think we got the reaction maybe we pictured in our mind, right? So,
Right.
when you say, you're expecting, right? It's people are so happy, people are
Right.
so, they're so excited. But I think when you say you're adopting, they automatically turn to what's wrong. I can't fault anybody, but
Of course.
I wish the reactions were a little bit different. If somebody is telling you that, they decide to adopt, right? They
Yeah.
decide to bring a child into their family and they're going to do this, the best thing you can do is just be super excited for them,
Yes.
because they're sharing something so intimate, right, with you.
Mm-hmm.
So just be excited, even if you don't understand. Just more
Yeah, we have to learn to
to
trust each other's
hmm
judgment. And I think the
when they
way
choose.
that we can do that is exactly what you're doing today is
Hmm.
being vocal, sharing your experience,
Yeah.
and then hopefully with that encouraging others to share as well.
I wasn't always vocal, and I still get kind of nervous about it. I think we're just our Indian community sort of wires us that way a little bit. But I'm so thankful for the people that have encouraged me, people that have walked this path to just speak your truth, speak what is, happening in your life. You don't know who you're going to affect. And our community just needs to be open about a lot of things that go on, in our
Right.
families, in our behind closed doors, like there's alcoholism or sexual abuse or,
Yeah.
so many things that are not the, talked about that we know rampantly
Yeah.
happens, right?
I,
That,
I feel it is because of embarrassment. That there's
mhm,
this thing of, well, we're too embarrassed to talk about that, or we don't want anyone to know because of reputation. Um,
mhm.
and what is all that when compared to the big
Yeah,
picture?
saving a life, right? Yeah, saving a life, saving, giving giving someone a voice, making someone feel validated that they're not alone, the thing that's
Yeah.
so important. Jesus, walked with sinners, all of that. He reached out to people. So I think if we see somebody going through something and we know, and there's something in our heart sort of like nudging us,
Yeah.
I think we should reach out to people more.
So, Vinny, could you share with us what is the process, the post placement process after you bring your child home and you're starting your everyday life? What happens next?
Yeah, so once you brought your child home, it doesn't end there. You have to do reports. You have a social worker that you work with and with your
Okay.
agency, and there are 3-month post-placement reports, or 6-month, and so on. And it differs a little bit between agencies, but it goes on for a number of years. And
Okay.
you're basically they're checking to see if the child is okay and if you're adjusting well as a family.
Can you tell me where you're at now?
We just submitted our family report number 3, which is a year and a half later. It's broken
Okay.
down differently between agencies, so this may not apply to the next person, but it's interesting as a parent, right? Because you're kind of reporting about what's going on with your child. So I feel
Yeah.
like adoption really rips open every part of you, and you sort of have to lay out. You have to be an open book, and it's
Transparent.
tough.
Very
You have to
transparent.
be, yeah, it's tough, because
Yeah.
sometimes, it's tough to do that, but that's the cost of adoption.
So it's not always somebody coming out to your house and making a visit.
No, it's
Okay.
not. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not. That can certainly happen. I'm sure it does. But for us, that's not the case.
Vinny, have you ever been in a situation where, you're either with your son and people have asked you awkward questions or things that, probably weren't very appropriate?
There have been a few situations where I didn't know what to say. One of the main things that sort of come up, and I don't think it's coming from a bad place, it's probably coming from a place of just wanting information,
Yeah.
is, asking how much adoption cost, right? How much it costs. And
Wow.
I can see how
Hmm.
people want to know because they,
Yeah.
they're just curious. If you really want to know and you want to step into adoption, I'll be happy to talk to you in private about it and give you all
Yeah.
the information you need. But if it's just a matter of just knowing this, it's a tough question for adoptive parents to,
Right.
answer, especially, if your child is present.
Right. They're asking you like, "Oh, I got a new car. How much did it cost?"
Yeah,
Did you get a deal? Because I want to know so I can get a deal. And it's that kind of an awkward thing of assigning a price to a life, maybe.
right. It's very awkward.
Yeah.
It always catches me off guard, and I have to get better at how to respond to that. But I know that doesn't feel right to me. So I
Yeah.
would say, especially in our community, know the language about adoption. There's adoption friendly language out there. There's tons of articles about that. It's birth. I know we're not comfortable talking about it in our community, but like there's birth parents, right? There's I am a parent. I'm an adoptive parent, but I'm a parent. So if you were to refer to me in front of my son, you wouldn't say, "Oh, you're the adoptive parent." You would say you're the
Yeah.
parent,
You're the
right?
parent.
In conversation, people have asked, "Oh, where are his parents?" We're right here. What they're really asking is that, what happened to his birth
Birth.
family or birth parents.
Anybody out there is thinking of adoption, what would your advice be to them?
Mhm. Yeah, so I actually thought about this, and I wanted to just let them know that the first thing that you really have to do is you have to pray about it. You have to really pray and see if this is, where God is leading you. Reach out to other adoptive families and get their experience. Do your research. There's so many, books out there about adoption. If you're thinking about it,
Yeah, that way you're just not jumping into it blindly.
absolutely, yeah.
Well, Vinny, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and coming forward and speaking on this subject that not a lot of people in our community come forward and talk about. So, really appreciate your dedication.
No, thank you to you to just giving, a platform to talk about it and to be candid, be open, about it. It's needed, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
It takes people like you to come out so that we can make changes little by little, and really, really appreciate you doing that.
Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Good night. God bless.
Good night. Bye.